Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Zander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Zander Sprague, and today I am honored to be joined by Mickie Kennedy. Mickie, tell us who you are and what you do.
So I am the founder and president of eReleases, which is a press release distribution platform, and I help people get their releases out to the media over a large newswire, PR newswire, paying about a third of what you would if you went directly through them. And in addition to that, I am a writer and have a creative writing background, and I think that's helped me quite a bit in sort of the education side of things, telling my customers ideas and being strategic in what types of releases they should be issuing rather than the typical press releases that most people see that are out there that unfortunately are probably ineffective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for the work you do for small businesses. I know as an entrepreneur, there's times where I want to let the world know about what I'm doing. And PR can be an incredibly expensive endeavor with, sadly, sometimes poor ROI on it. You know, you're like, oh my God, this is great. So here's a question I have for you. What are kind of some of the rules about repurposing? So let's say you got an article printed in MSN or USA Today or something like that. Awesome. Can you then take that, modify a little, and do your own release on it?
So you can't take the exact article, but you could certainly take the concept of the article and draft it in a press release format for the
Sure.
media. The thing is that when a journalist writes something, it's called earned media, and
Yeah.
they own the copyright on it behind it. So you couldn't just copy and paste an article that was very favorable of you and send that out to the media.
Got it.
But what you could certainly do is take the idea, what that article focused on, and redraft that in a press release format and in your own language and send it out, and then certainly hopefully have other people write it into an article that is not very dissimilar than what the other one was.
Sure, sure. I mean, I've got to imagine if, for example, you're putting press release out about your book and someone writes something nice, but you're like, hey, that's great, but I'd like more people to know about it. You're obviously going to be writing about your book. Like you do, okay, it's my book, I can talk about it. So yeah, I was just interested.
Yeah, and you
It's
can also take that, one person who wrote about your book favorably and share it with your social media, share it with your newsletters, get that out there, put, the language on your website. You can certainly do that, and that's
yeah,
completely appropriate and a
yeah,
great way to
obviously,
sort
as
of
long as you're
recycle.
giving credit, you go as seen in USA Today or whatever, and give that author credit. Yes, absolutely. That's cool. So, how did you kind of come to be doing e-releases?
So I started many years ago in finishing a creative writing degree and transitioned into a job at a telecom research startup as employee number three. And because you have to wear a lot of hats in a startup, they had me do their press releases because I had the writing background. And I had a lot of failures at first, but then I got really good at it because I realized that what we were publishing that was data, I knew that's gold because the media loves data, but we weren't telling the stories behind the data. So you kind of have to flesh that out a little bit. And so once we started talking about the story behind the data, like we had published the Caribbean telecom traffic, which is not very sexy, but one country stood out as having way more traffic to and from the United States than all the others. And the reason was it was the call center for 1-900 numbers, which were popular at the time. And for those who don't know what that is, you could call 1-900 a series of numbers, and you could get your horoscope pre-recorded. Or for, that might cost 50 cents a minute, but for like $3 or $4 a minute, you could speak to a live psychic and get your horoscope. But there was all different types of it. There was dating party lines. There was, you name it. You want pet advice. You have an unruly pet. You could talk to someone who's a pet expert and just pay a fee per a minute, and it would just go onto your landline phone bill. And this was pre-cell phone era. But yeah, so that when we talked about that story behind it, that got picked up in like Financial Times, Economist, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and several trade publications in the telecom industry. And so that really showed me that the journalists are looking for things to build a story arc. Journalists, even when it's a small article, like to follow a story format. And, that there's nothing rocket science about a story format. It's the same thing when you read a story to a kid at night. It just sort of goes up to a climax and then comes down. A good joke follows the same format. It leads up, there's the
Yeah.
punchline, and then there's the follow after that. So make sure you have enough information in the press release for a journalist to write in a story arc. We get a lot of product launch press releases that are like, here's the product, here's a list of features, and here's a page to learn more and buy it. And that's not enough information to write a story. Take a use case study, someone who had used your product, beta tested it, or had trialed it, and what their experience was. And
Right.
you have a company that was losing 7% a year. They put your logistics software solution in, and it gave them better proposals and estimates. And as a result, they're on track after 90 days to make a net 5% this year, which is like a huge turnaround for a company that was losing money. And then maybe have a quote by them. That's more of a story arc. So journalists can say, hey, there's this new product. Here's someone who used it before and after. Here's a quote by them. And maybe they'll list a feature or two, but that much more satisfies what a journalist is looking to write about. So keep that in mind. So many people write press releases in the what's in it for me, and you have to think about what's in it for the journalist, what's in it for their audience, what
Yeah.
would make their audience really want to read this and care about it. And there are ways to take and satisfy all three people, all three sides of this, the audience, the journalist, and you. And it really is just a matter of balancing enough information so that you're providing something that would be really interesting and relevant for that audience.
Definitely, definitely. And you're right, it is a bit of an art. Here's a question because gets lots of talk and stuff. What are your feelings about chat GPT, AI and stuff, and how you can put in an idea, get something generated? Are you sort of, it's cool technology, it's dangerous, for kind of what you do, and
No, I don't think it's dangerous at all. So, I am very hesitant about using AI on my website. I know that so far Google's not punishing AI content, but Google's really smart and they know what's written by a human and what's written by
oh
AI.
sure.
So I think that they're going to wait and see what the user experience is long term before they decide. But for me, my comfort level, everything that I put on my website, I want it to be written by a human.
Sure.
And everything that, news outlets run, bona fide news outlets, is written by humans as well.
Hmm.
The one thing is the press release isn't the end product. And so I actually feel that when it comes to a press release, having AI help you write it or, draft it, I don't have a problem with that. Now, the problem is if you approach AI and say, write a press release on this company, it's going to be garbage because AI has been trained on the bulk of press releases out there. And the sad reality is 97% of press releases that get issued over a wire do not generate earned media. And that's what we
Sure.
call it when a journalist writes about you, earned media, because you've earned it. And
Hmm.
so you want to make sure you approach AI with an idea in mind, hopefully a strategic, important idea that's newsworthy. And then my best approach is to not have AI. Don't go and say, write a 600 word press release on, this idea, and here's information on the company. My a better approach is, here's a company, here's what they do. I know that the more advanced AIs than ChatGPT does have recency on the internet, so it
Yeah.
can have spidered and learned a little bit about you, and then also provide what you want the release to be about, and then say how would you structure such a press release, and
Right.
then it'll give you a format, and then break it down element by element. Say, hey, how would what's a headline you would write for this press release you just organized and structured, and then it gives you one. And then if you really like it, you can go with it, or say, hey, I think that we're really missing the point here. Remember the press release is about XYZ. And then, once you're happy with what they've come up with a headline, say, okay, now give me five variations of this successful headline.
Yeah.
And now you have a little more variety to choose from. Then say, how would you open, this press release? Write the opening paragraph, and then if you feel all the important elements are there in that opening paragraph, you can, take that, accept it, or you can ask it to say, hey, I would like you to write three variations of this opening paragraph containing all these important elements. But between each iteration, pause, think, and consider, what can I do in this next version that will make it stronger or more unique? Whenever
Definitely.
you ask AI to stop and slow down and ponder, it does, and it
Hmm.
yields you such better results. So if you just said, give me 25 ideas to write for a blog, you'll get 25, you know, soft ideas. And, some of them are going to be gold, but most of them won't be. But if you approached it, it's like, give me five ideas for a blog post, and then say, okay, now give me five, but think what could be more strategic or important. You'll get better results. And at the end of it, you'll have 25 better ideas than if you just said, give me 25 raw
Absolutely.
ideas.
Yeah.
And,
And I've
and
I've been starting to use a little chat GPT because it was, some research I wanted to do. I was interested to learning about monetizing my YouTube channel, but I had no idea like how does that work and stuff. And the ability to get an answer and then further refine and go, oh, okay, now that you've given me that information, can you expand on this or explain this? And I have to say that in 5 minutes, I got really good information. I'm keeping in mind that I will accept it as pretty valid. I'm not going to say it's 100% because it's AI and there may be some misinformation or,
sure.
and I don't want to say misinformation. It just may not be exactly the way it is. But honestly, I got to say, Mickie, like for me, what would have probably taken me weeks of trying to find sources, I got in 5 minutes. I was like, wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah, I find that my approach to the AI and breaking it down takes between about 8 minutes, and the most it's ever taken is 22 minutes. And that
Right.
one was a little more difficult because we had three founders of a company, and they were all very unique and from completely different worlds. I think like one was a surgeon, one was a juggler or a clown,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like you had to devote a paragraph to each, so it was a much longer piece of copy. But at the end of it, it was very well written. The areas to watch out for, I think, are the quote. AI can write a quote that's usually a good quote, but it's not a great quote.
Yeah.
And so make sure you get a great headline, a great opening paragraph, and an amazing quote. You want that quote to sing, because if a journalist writes an article about the subject that you're talking about, there's always the chance that you could be cut from the article. It happens, the managing editors look and they'll say, oh, this is an interesting subject matter, but why are they mentioning this little company I've never heard of? And they'll cross it out. But if there's an amazing quote in there by you, the managing editor is going to just probably put a check mark beside it saying amazing quote. I don't know who
Yeah.
this is, but this is a great quote. So it's a way for you to survive in the editing and cutting floor. Even though you inspired the article, you can be cut from it, which is very unfortunate. So,
Yeah.
and by amazing quote, what do I mean? Of course, I mean like a wordsmith, me with a creative background, but I also recognize most people don't have that. So, be powerful, paraphrase something so strong that if they were to, paraphrase it back into their own language, it would be soft and dull compared to yours. You would ache a little bit for like, oh, it was so much better worded before.
Yeah.
So really spend some extra time on that quote. It's an amazing way to stand out. And also, if a journalist is looking at two stories of equal newsworthiness, but one has an amazing quote, they know that their article is going to read better with an amazing quote, and they could write the same article for both. So they're going to gravitate towards that one. So to really spend a little time with the quote. But that being said, I have no problem with AI writing the press release. It's not the end product. It is
Well,
the
and
building blocks for a journalist.
absolutely, and I will liken it to, I'm a talker, not a typer. So in the three books I wrote, I dictated. And so I had something to, I had some clay to work with to then say, okay, that's, I have something on the paper that I can now go and fix. So I think, I view AI as it gives me something good to start off with. I'll then put my own touches, but I have something to work with. So, well, that's cool. What do you like best about what you do?
I think it's the successes that we have for small businesses where we really make a meaningful impact on their business as a result of them getting earned media. And it's always exciting and just it makes you feel good that, something that you've done has really helped and given them an edge.
Definitely. In my book, Epic Begins, I one of the things I talk about is that failure is part of the journey. We don't get it all right. I wanted to know, since you've been doing PR now for 20 plus years, what are like what's one or two good learning opportunities that you had? Things that may not have, ideas you had that didn't quite go the way you thought, or
Sure. So I really felt that if you wrote the best press release, you had a really much stronger chance of success. And I think the reason for that is when I came into the PR world and started issuing releases over the newswire, PR newswire, they had strong adherence to AP style, had to be perfect,
Mhm.
and it just had to be extremely well crafted. And I felt like that was the secret to getting good PR. And I wrote a book about that and sent it out into the world. And I saw really good press releases come through that generated no earned media. And so I changed, now I feel like it's not necessary. And to be honest, there's been a relaxing of the standards and adherences. And so the newswire cares less about how strongly you adhere to the AP style, and journalists care less as well. They're more interested in the meat of what it is you're announcing. What's the story? What's the angle? What's the real sizzle in this press release? What are you getting out there? And that really opened my eyes as to what people should focus on, and shifted my education from writing a great press release to, hey, you can look at other press releases, you can sort of look at their structure. The important things are, of course, the quote and the opening paragraph and the headline. But to be honest, almost anyone can write a good press release, and it doesn't have to be a great press release. It
Right,
has to be about an amazing or great newsworthy subject.
right,
And so that's where I've been spending a lot of my time and energy is having people focus on, what is a strategic press release? What makes it different? And I always open with the story, the importance of the story, having the elements for a journalist to build out a story really is one of the first things that you have to learn. But there's other little things that you can do, and based on the types of releases that are getting picked up, what are the 3% of releases that journalists are gravitating to and turning into articles?
definitely. And I also think that there's a fundamental shift in the last 20 years where when you started and when I started, most of the internet was sort of in its infancy. So it was harder to actually get an article written because it was going into a physical publication. So there was only so much space. Now that relaxing, I would hypothesize is because it's all online. So they're looking for content, and there isn't a, oh, sorry, Mickey, you don't make it because we got a better, we didn't have room for you. Now it's infinite. Would you agree with that or?
I do. I think that, the opportunities are just expanding. So many people, when they think about press releases, just think that, hey, media is dying, but the media is expanding. I mean, there are so many people that have access to the wire now that don't fit the traditional mode of the media. We have influencers. For example, there's Instagram influencers that have access to the wire to look at fashion feeds and
Hmm.
get stuff as soon as it hits, because then they can take the photos and put them on Instagram and share them with their followers, and it
Hmm.
makes them feel like this person has an end because this hasn't really been released yet. It's almost like it was released this morning at 9 a.m. and this person's already posting it within hours, and so it really does give someone a different aspect, and we are getting a lot more of our news from non-traditional news sources. And I love it that The Wire is so accepting of these people. I follow somebody on TikTok called Snackalator, and he does a weekly roundup of new snacks hitting grocery store shelves, and he pulls all the photos down from press releases, and he's cited it several times. And it really is great to see how adaptive this social media and these new forms of media are, and they still need data. They still need content. And the newswire is really a great way to do it. And we're fortunate in the US that we basically have a duopoly of newswires. It's Business Wire and PR Newswire.
Right.
There's other wires you've probably heard of, like Reuters and
Bloomberg
Associated
and
Press and all of those. They work on a different business model. They don't issue press releases. They issue articles they wrote, and they license those to people so that you can
right.
see the feeds and stuff like that. So sometimes in your local paper, you'll see AP in front of a story, and they said, "Hey, rather than have our editor who's and writers who are overwhelmed right now write that article, they just pulled it down and paid a
Yeah.
licensing fee to the Associated Press." But in the U.S., it's basically the duopoly. So you don't have to go to both. You just have to go to one, because journalists will check out both places to make sure that they're covering their industry properly. And as a result, it makes it easier for you. The downside of a duopoly is it's going to cost more and it's so expensive. But by utilizing eReleases, it is a huge cost savings for going over PR Newswire.
Oh, that's cool. And you've mentioned that. I think, as I said, PR is really important. People won't buy what they don't know exists, so you got to try and get people to write about who whatever your product is or who you are as a person doing what you're doing because it's important. So how does it? Can you take a moment and explain how e-releases, how it works, how you work with someone, how long it takes, etc.?
Sure. So if you have a finished press release and you know it's in the proper format and you're ready to go, you can place an order and have it go out for the next business day. If you're in a hurry and you want to, don't mind paying a fee, you can have it go out the same day. But if you're, not sure, you want us to take a look at the release, you can just send it along to us, give us a 1 to 2 business days to look it
Hmm.
over and get back to you with tips and maybe ways in which to strengthen the press release. But if you're completely just starting and you don't have a release and you're not sure what you should be writing about, that could take a little bit longer because we need to get some information from you, and
Definitely.
then have someone check out your website and draft a release and get back to you. So that might take a week or so.
Sure.
And we do work a la carte, so it's per press release basis. So the commitment is low. You can buy packages if once you've tried this, you're comfortable moving forward to save a little bit of money. But there's no reason that even using AI and your own talents, that you can't come up with a great press release or a great PR campaign. And that's the one thing I tell people is never judge PR with one press release. You really need to do an entire PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases, testing and trying different approaches and seeing which one resonates with the media. The truth is, you only need one press release to go really large to make a huge, meaningful, difference to your business. And so, doing a campaign allows you 6 to 8 of those opportunities.
Sure.
And I also have free training when it comes to what strategic types of releases you should focus on. I built this out during the pandemic and looking at the 3% of releases that do get picked up, and I saw a lot of patterns. And for anyone interested in that, it's available at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, and it's very small commitment, less than an hour, but it'll give you a huge lesson in the types of releases that journalists are responding to and find meaningful. And I'm shocked at the number of PR firms that still issue the same types of releases that don't get picked up, when there's so many strategic types of press releases they could be focusing on that are going to have a much higher chance of media success.
Definitely. Well, that is great. And obviously people can find you at eRelease.com.
Right.
One of the things I'd
eReleases.com.
love to ask my guests about is in my book, I think an important part of any epic journey are these two words of not yet. The concept that I'm working on something. So if you're writing a book, oh, has your book come out? Not yet. You say no, it makes it sound like it will never come out. I've got to imagine from what you've shared and my own experience is not yet's an important part of your PR campaign. I mean, has it been picked up? Not yet. Or that wasn't, but the next one got picked up or whatever. But in your own life, Mickie, what's one or two of your not yets, things that you are like, oh, I want to do this, or I'd like to achieve that?
Sure. I think the first one is rolling out a service directly for nonfiction authors. We get a lot of authors, even those that are published with major publishers, who are coming to us and saying, we're lost. The publisher doesn't market anymore, and it's on us. And what can you do for us? And I know that there are things that we could do, but they sort of go beyond what we normally do at eReleases. And so I think a more tailored offering for these types of authors, in which we go in and we build out a campaign that coincides with the launch, before and after, I think could be a lot more successful. And there are types of releases that we can do that will definitely generate earned media 100%. And I feel like it's a lot more involved. It's a lot more of a commitment. But I think that something like that, I think would be really well received in the industry.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. That would be really very helpful. I can say as an author and trying to promote my book, it's challenging. It's challenging. That's great. So people can get a hold of you by going to eRelease.com. Are there other places?
eReleasesplural.com. And all my social media is on the lower right of the website, including my personal LinkedIn. And that's a great way to reach out to me personally. And again, that masterclass is at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, and it's completely free and it's less than an hour long. And it's perfect for someone who's either tried it and it didn't work, or they've never tried PR, so that you can build out a campaign from the beginning that will be strategic and have a much higher chance of success.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I know I'm going to be checking that out. So, Mickie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. To my audience, if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Zander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Zander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.